I'm just gonna say it. These guys always have and always will be better than In Flames.
Lies! Lies and slander!
Today we are ranking the albums of Dark Tranquillity, starting with Skydancer in 1993. The debut from one of my favorite bands of all time, but here with Anders of In Flames on vocals, and I'd say that the songwriting jump from this to The Gallery is like night and day. It has some stuff I like in the guitar work, but there's just not as much of a full package to enjoy here, in my opinion anyways. The performances just feel very meandering, and the production could be better. In spite of some fun, aggressive moments, it feels kind of forgettable. I've revisited this album many times over the last 15 years or so, and I still couldn't hum you a single melody off of it without pulling it up again. There are plenty of other albums from this era I enjoy more, like Sentenced North from Here and At the Gates with Fear I Kissed the Burning Darkness, which both released the same year. Definitely among my least favorite releases to revisit from the band, but even so, it has its place and I genuinely don't think they have a bad album. I enjoy them all, but this one is going to... Okay. Next up we have The Gallery in 1995. Absolute masterpiece of an album and a real tone setter for what Gothenburg melodic death metal would become. To me, this is one of the best and most important early melodeath albums of all time. Punish My Heaven sets the tone right away. The title track brings those acoustic guitars and mournful female vocals against a woodblock, not to mention that main driving melody. The One Brooding Warning is just a cascade of drums and guitar before making that proggy transition. Midway through Infinity has those amazing gang vocals. Just a totally unique experience, if maybe slightly bloated at times. I wouldn't say it's perfect or my favorite, but it is one of my favorite foundational, again, melodeath albums from this early era. I'm putting it at fantastic. There are days where I'd make a case for perfection. Next up, we have The Mind's Eye in 1997. Stepping up the speed and aggression from The Gallery, though I will say losing a little bit of the atmosphere. You've got some real bangers kicking off strong early on with Dreamlord Degenerate, Zodiacal Light, and Hedon. Then deeper in, there's Dissolution Factor Red, Atom Heart, and Tongues. Going back to more of the atmosphere of The Gallery, we get more female vocals on Insanity's Crescendo, and also some of that energy continuing into Still Moving Sinews. Not one of my favorites, and not as good as The Gallery, but still a very strong listen. I'm putting this one at amazing. Then we got Projector in 1999.
Not crying.
Definitely one of the albums in their discography with a bit of a bad reputation with some people, and kind of understandably so. It's a pretty big shift to more gothic influences, and it's not nearly as consistent. That said, I definitely have a sweet spot for it, and it's not without some career standouts in Free Card, Undue Control, and especially Therein, which was a real treat to see them play live a few years back and belt out the chorus with the crowd. I also like the Sun-Fired Blanks, Doberman, On Your Time, Exposure, and this may surprise some, but Day to End as well. That one just scratches the same sing-along itch as 80s pop ballads like Sinead O'Connor's Nothing Compares to You. This most recent listen I made an interesting connection in that Two Tongues use almost the exact same riff from Undue Control to open their first album. A little inconsistent, but quite enjoyable. I might actually like it more than The Mind's Eye. This one is also going to amazing. Then we got Haven in 2000. I'd argue that this is the album where they fully transitioned into their current day sound, and it's the beginning of my favorite era. It's no damage done, we'll get to that, but it falls only just short of it in an all-around impressive discography. Very consistent, but also with some real standouts like Wonders at Your Feet, Not Built to Last, The Same, Fabric, and Runwan. Killer riffs, anthemic vocals, and incredible atmosphere. I've occasionally heard some hate for this album as well, but unlike Projector, where I can at least understand even if I disagree, I will never really get how someone could outright dislike this one. By all means, though, I'd love to hear a compelling case, so if you are one of those people, share why down in the comments. This is all just my opinion, as always, but for me, this is going to fantastic. Then we got Damage Done in 2002. The beginning of my favorite trilogy of albums from this band, not to mention it's one of the few where they only utilize harsh vocals, so every single one of these songs is guaranteed to go that much harder. This album always comes to mind with high-octane riff after riff on tracks like Monochromatic Stains and The Treason Wall, Final Resistance, Cathode Ray Sunshine, The Enemy. Every song is single-worthy, going fast and hard while still delivering a smorgasbord of hooks. Not only my favorite Dark Tranquillity album, not only one of my favorite albums of 2002, but also just one of my favorite albums of all time. It is going to perfection. They followed that up with Character in 2005. Very strong and equally aggro follow-up. In fact, I almost consider this to be sort of a Damage Done Part 2, very similar in both songwriting and production. Another great album opener with the new build. Love that bass on Out of Nothing, the endless feed with more sick synth lines, Lost to Apathy, Mind Matter, Am I One, Senses Tied, really another with no bad or even mid tracks. It is a banger through and through. This one is also going to perfection. Then we got Fiction in 2007. Closing out this trilogy on a real high note with an album that is still every bit of a banger while also offering a little bit more in the way of dynamics and a sprinkle of clean singing making a return. Nothing to No One is another rager of an opener, continuing with the tradition of the previous two albums. Same goes for Terminus and the Lesser Faith with those killer riffs, piano, and another incredible moment. But then you've also got more somber and gothic sounding tracks like the incredibly anthemic Misery's Crown. Once more, too many great tracks to name. Eye Cipher, Empty Me, Focus Shift, not a dud here, and all again memorable enough to be singles. Of course, this one's also going to perfection. Then we got We Are the Void in 2010. Now, after the high bar set by those three, I feel like they almost wrote themselves into a corner where they either had to deliver another best album of all time in the same style or completely change gears. And unfortunately, instead, this feels like more of the same, but still very good. Another great opener in Shadow in Our Blood, so many killer hooks on that one. Dream Oblivion is great with that super atmospheric intro. Cool start-stop riffs on The Grandest Accusation. Her Silent Language is another great piano-driven melodic cut in a somewhat similar vein to Misery's Crown and Therein. And then the title track really harkens back to the best moments of Damage Done. Slightly less consistent start to finish. If this had come out after Haven, I'd have probably liked it more, but as it stands in the wake of those previous three, it just has a harder time competing on that level. So I'm putting this one at great tier. Then we got Construct in 2013. Now here is the left turn I think they felt they needed to make given what I said about the last one, but unfortunately the execution is a bit hit and miss. I think it is notable that founding guitarist Martin Henriksen left the band after this release, citing a loss of passion for playing music, and it's the second to last with lead guitarist Nicholas Sundin, and I've always wondered if that played into how the music comes across. Because my biggest criticism when it came out was, where the hell are the riffs? Like, you can find them here and there on the likes of The Science of Noise, Apathetic, and What Only You Know, but not nearly on the same level of emphasis. It all just feels much more drifty and kind of further leaning into a more gothic atmospheric direction. I'd almost compare it on that level to like Tribulation. That said, I've grown to appreciate what this album has to offer over the years, but the shift in production and seeming emphasis of atmosphere over riffs initially turned me off and still makes it one that I tend to revisit a lot less. So this one landed at good tier. Next up is Atoma in 2016. Now this, on the other hand, felt like a huge course correction and a return to form after nearly 10 years of me starting to lose interest in a band that had meant so much to me for so long. The Pitiless is just one of many stellar tracks to get those member berries talking. You've got plenty of atmosphere on both faster tracks like Encircled and Neutrality, and slower, more melodic ones like the title track. More killer bass rumble and head-bobbing energy on Forward Momentum, and that motivational build on Clearing Skies makes me feel like a helpless little baby. As always, the gorgeous keyboard along with Michael Stan's unparalleled command of his vocal range make for some stunning melodrama. I feel like they sort of married the gloomier production of the last album with more of the riffs and energy from the older stuff. Still not as consistent track for track as some of the classics, but still one I love revisiting, and it was among my favorites of that year. I had this one higher before, but I'd say it's probably about on the same level as We Are the Void, if just like slightly better, so I'm putting it at great tier. Then we got Moment in 2020. Now, this album has had so many ups and downs for me over the years. When it first came out, I didn't really like it, then it grew on me. Now, each time I go back to it, I kind of waver back and forth. Overall, I get the feeling that these are all good songs that I would very much enjoy live, but the production just feels a little flat and lifeless, which takes away from their emotional impact. Phantom Days has a really awesome synth line that reminds me of something off of Fiction or Damage Done. Identical to None has a super infectious growl-along chorus, great dark moody vibes to Ego Deception, and a drawn-out exit. Transient never fails to get me bobbing my head along to its hypnotic chorus, and for something more sorrowful, there's the Dark Unbroken. But it's just missing something, like the soul isn't quite there. It's what I've heard before, but kind of hollow, and not unlike Construct, a few of these songs I completely forget even exist. So this one also landed at good, slightly above Construct. Which brings us to Endtime Signals in 2024.
Beyond all senselessness, the Moscows have a run. We saw what's left behind, the wasted years of scorn.
Pretty banger single in Unforgiven. From a production standpoint, this still sounds quite similar to Moment, but I'm hearing a bit more energy in the overall presentation that actually gets me banging my head like I should be. The Last Imagination, Enforced Perspective, Drowned Out Voices, and A Bleaker Sun also get pretty heavy while still offering a softer, brighter counterpart. Good soloing, too. Solid opener in Shivers and Voids, and Neuronal Fire is just pure bliss. Like, something about the synth melody on this one is like being wrapped in a warm blanket. Even the songs that aren't my favorites generally have things I enjoy about them. Like Wayward Eyes and Not Nothing didn't make my playlist, but they both have some great hooks and get me moving. Really great synth work all over Our Disconnect, and while One of Us Is Gone strikes me as a little cheesy, I love the string and orchestral elements, and Closer False Reflection also feels more like an Evergrey track to me. I'd say overall this one feels a little bit more Atoma than Moment, but still just doesn't quite have that X factor to push it up alongside the classics. It may just be a case that Michael and company are just at a point where super dark and heavy are no longer reflective of where they are in their lives, and that's fine too. If I could put it between tiers, I'd probably put it like right around here, but I think as it stands, I will leave it at great tier. Y'all check out this playlist for more melodic death metal rankings, including In Flames, Amon Amarth, Carcass, Soilwork, Arch Enemy, and more. And also check out this video for your personal YouTube recommendation. Comment below, where do you agree, where do you disagree? This is just my opinion again, but that'll do it for now. Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.